So the network is here to join people up across Cumbria, to inspire people about stuff, to champion what's going on, sometimes to advocate on behalf of the arts and culture sector, try and force money out of people that want to give us money to do things, that sort of thing. But also, I mean, we've been doing these calls. This is about call number 195. And we've been doing these calls since February 2020, just before the pandemic, when Zoom was a new thing to everybody and we were trying to work out how to stay in touch when everyone was isolated. And so if nothing else, it's a way of just staying in contact with each other as well and connecting up. And it's amazing how little things bob out of these calls. People meet somebody, people see there's someone that can help them to do a project, etc., etc. So it's really great that that we've continued these going. This morning is no exception to that. Mr. John Hegley has joined us with tinsel around his neck, and I noticed flashing Christmas tree lights behind him that you're trying. There you go. Where are you, John?
I'm in Hackney in our living room. Mel thought she was going to be out of the living room this morning, so she's gone back to bed.
Well, you're very welcome to join us this morning, and we're going to hear from you. John is coming up to Carlisle to do some workshops about writing, amongst other things, and we'll explore his deep love for Carlisle shortly. I'm also going to be joined by Elie Gussman. Elie, where are you this morning? Are you in Liverpool?
No, I'm actually in Sedbergh.
In Sedbergh?
Yeah, which is my home base now, but I used to live in Hackney 2 years ago, so I'm a relative newcomer to Cumbria.
Well, it's beautiful to have you here, Elie. Elie works with the Royal Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra. I hope I've got that right. And together with Mr. Andrew Deakin, who's a firm favourite on these calls, there's a great project about to start in Barrow involving the Liverpool Phil and doing all sorts of bits of work and performances and workshops and working with schools, no doubt, etc., etc. We'll find out more about that. I think it's an amazing collaboration. And I think it's 3 years, I think is what it's going to be as well. So this is just very much the start of it. So we're going to find out a bit about that from a Philharmonic perspective, but also from a Barrow perspective as well. A huge thrill for the county. So that is the plan for this morning. And if anybody else has got anything else to talk about, just chuck it into chat, or if we can squeeze it in the end, we'll do that too. Hello to Tina, who's just joined, Patricia, Helen, who's just joined, Monique, who's just joined as well. Great to have you all with us. Thank you for your time. And Monique, that's a fine hat you've got on. It almost out hats Phil, but I think Phil probably, I don't know. No, it's probably a score draw. All right. Let's talk to John then. John, it's very nice to have you with us. Christmas, is that a thing? Is that a thing that's good for you and in your household? And have you got your shopping done, etc., etc.?
Shopping not done. Tree up early this year because Mel had to go and get some stuff from B&Q, so I went up there as well and got the tree. Be seeing my daughter Isabella, which is always lovely, and I particularly just remember Christmases at home when I was a kid, actually, and Dad having his cigar. He only used to smoke a cigar once a year. Obviously now he probably wouldn't do it, but the smell of the cigar that I got him.
Do you know what? I was exactly the same. I used to get my dad a cigar every Christmas, and it was the only time that he smoked a cigar. Whether he enjoyed it or not, I have no idea, because it just
my father absolutely loved it, and what I really loved was he used to be like the king of his domain. You know, he sat there with his kids around him and his mum next to him having a glass of sherry, and it's just beautiful.
Nice. So what will you be doing on Christmas Day?
Mel usually gets me some books. So I usually sit on the sofa reading a book, and I've got to say Mel tends to do the cooking, but I do the eating as well. So I join in.
Nice. And what's the connection that you have with Carlisle? And tell us a bit about why you're coming to Carlisle.
First performed at the Stanix, must be 1990. And I remember, but then in 1989 though, which is how I know the town, is because I was doing a border TV program called Word of Mouth with Tom Pickard from Newcastle, and I was staying overnight for the episodes that we made at Border, and that was made with the British Film Institute actually, so they actually own the rights to those films. But I got to meet amazing poets, John Cooper Clarke, Tom Leonard, amazing people, Edwin Morgan, Caroline Duffy, and it was just a really lovely time staying around there. And I used to go over to, and I can't remember which one of the stores, one of the department stores, and I used to go for my breakfast upstairs in, I don't know which one would it be. It was very near.
So Bullow's probably, which then became
upstairs. It was definitely upstairs, and I used to really I just used to find it very peaceful because I was miles away from home, and I'd just take a book over there before we started the filming and just soak it up.
And so therefore you've kind of just stayed in touch with people in the city since, or you've kind of come.
Well, I have, and then I got in touch with Phil and Susan doing stuff around, and also with Juliet. Juliet put me in touch actually with Phil and Susan, and then we made the book, which we talked about last time, the Scarcity of Biscuit book. So that's been a lovely little project that we made with Cowdew Press with Phil.
Just tell us, for those people that don't know that, just tell us a bit about that book.
The book is A Scarcity of Biscuit. I was Keats' poet in residence at Keats' house in 2012. I continued my interest in him. These are responses largely to the letters of John Keats. And although the gig is sold out, if you get in touch with Cowdew Press, Phil will be seeing me, and then I'll sign it to whoever wants. They'll bring the books over, so we can still get books to people for Christmas.
So so Keats, was a serious poet. I mean, he died young, didn't he, Keats?
Died at 25, I think, and amazing, but also his unthinking of his own worth. He didn't really, as you may know, he said his epitaph should be, "Here lies somebody whose name was written on water," i.e. gone. There's something in there. It's just a tiny limerick about that I wrote, because he died in Rome. To Naples then Rome with the aim of a hot-headed healing he came, but the fever was lit, and then following it was a name writ on water in flame.
Nice. But what I was going to say was there's a seriousness to Keats because he was a serious poet, a proper poet. But a lot of a lot of your stuff is different to that. So
well, that's because he was different to that himself. That's because he was different to that. There's a picture of him sword fencing with celery with Mrs. Dilke. That's his landlady. There's some celery. You have to draw your own John Keats in here. So and if you get a copy of the book, I colour in the celery green for you. No, he was very playful. He used to play air bassoon,
right,
with his friends, but also, which again doesn't come over in the poetry, was not just self-doubting. He had mental health issues. He had depression. He had melancholia. He had anxiety. One of the things he said was, he says, at the moment, what I'm doing is a lot of reading, writing, and fretting. What I intend to do is get rid of the last one and concentrate on the other two. That's comedic.
Yeah. And so is that a connection for you? Because obviously you've done a lot of comedic writing and performing as well in your time. Is that something that you still do, that you still enjoy doing, or has
Very
life evolved, moved on
very
from
much
that?
so. I mean, I do education work. I do a bit of rural touring. In fact, I spoke one of the people who came up when I was doing rural touring in Cumbria last time. Somebody who was working in one of the local prisons came up to me. We had a chat, and there's one of the poems in the Keats book about that, and the importance of engendering optimism and creativity in prisoners. Which that was brilliant to hear somebody doing that in, I don't know which prison it would be, but I think it was a local one.
So the whole sort of stand-up and performing in front of people is still something that is very much part of your DNA.
Yeah. And I'm trying to broaden it out as well. I mean, like last night I was doing a piece about two youngsters I taught who had come from a country where there was conflict and they didn't have any English, and trying to deal with them. And what we couldn't communicate. And what I did was I picked up a pair of scissors and I showed it to them to get them to tell me their word. And then I tried to say it and I couldn't, and they just laughed. And it was just, we'd broken through, breaking through, trying to break through something is important.
Yeah. Matthew, I've just seen your note, Matthew, in chat. Matthew, do you want to just come off mute and just mention that? And put that to John because he may not have seen that in chat.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Hi, John. I'm delighted to meet you. My brother and I used to live in London for about 20 years, and you were one of the big names in the 80s and 90s. And I told my brother the other day that I was going to be on a Zoom with you this morning, and he said, "Ah, it's amazing. Can you ask him to sing Eddie Don't Like Furniture?" Now, I don't know that one. I know your great poem about glasses, but do you still sing Eddie Don't Like Furniture?
Well, I'll do a little snippet of it because I know we've got a lot of things on the program today, but I'll do you a little snip of it. So Eddie don't go for sofas or settees or those little tables that you have to buy in threes. The closest thing that Eddie's got to an article of furniture is the cheese board. If you go around Eddie's place and have a game of hide and seek, it isn't very long before you're found. Eddie don't like furniture. If you give him some for Christmas, he'll return it you.
Great, thank you.
Can we just have
My
a bit
brother will
more
be
stuff like
happy.
that, John? That was beautiful. And Matthew, how lovely that you remember John so firmly. I was watching John's face as you were saying you used to be really big in the 80s and 90s, and I still think he is pretty big.
Yes.
Well, you know, George Best used to be big in the 60s. You know, you can't.
I mean, you know, is it nice when people remember stuff that you've done? Because you know, I was at university in late 80s and early 90s, and my sister was as well. She's a huge fan of yours, John. And you know, there was a sort of circuit that was starting out, I suppose, and you were very much part of that, weren't you?
Yeah. I mean, that was really lovely doing the polys, and which are now unis, the unis and the polys, and now but it was polytechnics we did as well then. Freshers and Maybells. That was an important part of the work. I mean, that circuit is important, and the small gigs are important. I was doing the Islington Folk Club last night. And I know we're going to come on to the Liverpool Phil coming to Barrow, but I was telling somebody last night because I was looking at it that this is happening. And I just think it's amazing. And the fact that it's going to be 3, I know you're going to speak about it. I just want to express my joy at seeing that they're coming for 3 years, because I was involved in the Welfare State Project in Barrow, which was wonderful, but it was 1 year. And this is just so brilliant.
Yeah, it's nice. I agree with you. Elie, do you want to just come off mute? I mean, I will come to you in a little bit, but how did the 3-year thing come about?
Well, it's basically through the National Portfolio funding, which is for a 3-year term. But
that's Arts Council.
Brilliantly,
yeah?
Arts Council, yeah. But brilliantly, the Liverpool Phil really wanted to be longer than that. And of course, that's, you know, up to whether we get the funding. But we would love it to be 10 years at least, because, you know, it takes time to do something really meaningful.
Yeah. John, I mean, John, do you have any sort of ongoing relationships with institutions or people or places or schools that, you know, you feel that you can visit over time and sort of see things evolve?
Well, I suppose, Chair, I mean, really the young folk of the island to some extent, and just sort of seeing how they develop more generally.
Yeah.
And I think I said to you that I had a lovely message from one of the schools, Holy Family School in Barrow, in response to my dogs. Shall I do you my differences between dogs and deck chairs poem so you can have the context?
I think you probably ought to.
Okay, so this the differences between dogs and deck chairs. A deck chair doesn't beg or cock up its leg. Deck chairs don't sniff each other. Deck chairs can't swallow or swim or growl. Deck chairs aren't her or him. Deck chairs don't join in games with sticks. There are no prizes for well-trained deck chairs. Deck chairs rarely have names except deck chair. People don't have trouble putting up a dog. Dogs' legs don't have little notches in. Deck chairs have more letters. Dogs have more hairs. Deck chairs don't sniff about in autumn leaves. A deck chair receives little praise. Right, so that's... And in response to that, Holy Family School sent me a great big wodge of things that the children had done on these beautiful bits of paper. Miss Smith sent me these. And they did the differences between all sorts of things. One did the difference between Wayne Rooney and a potato. And which was very warm, you know, very warm. And anyway, this is the difference between a spoon and a wolf. Brilliant. What choice, eh? The difference between a spoon and a wolf. A spoon never howls. You can't eat with a wolf. A spoon isn't grey. A wolf isn't shiny. A spoon isn't hairy. A wolf isn't made of metal. A spoon hasn't got orange eyes. A wolf hasn't got a handle. A spoon hasn't got claws. You can't write on a wolf. A spoon hasn't got teeth. A wolf is flexible. So the Liverpool Philharmonic are getting a chance to work with kids like that.
That's amazing. So that came from one of the children at the school.
Yeah, and imagine that with an orchestra behind it.
So the deck chair and the dog, where did that come from?
I used to, when I was doing the shows, I used to do audience competitions at half time, and I used to do differences between things, and I just picked sort of use a dog and something, a dog and a shed I've done. That's pretty good and all. Yeah, what's the difference between a dog and Christmas? You could do, you know, it's. Yeah. But they'd obviously got the idea that you can choose anything. I mean, a dog and a spoon and a wolf, amazing, isn't it?
It's how they feed them in Barrow. It's all good stuff. Do you, if anyone's got any questions for John, by the way, or kind of obscure requests, then we'll take them and we'll see what happens. The favorite poem of yours, of mine, John, is obviously one about the seabird that has a big wingspan and does all sorts of interesting things and compares to bits under the sea, etc., etc. I don't know whether you've got that at hand.
Well, the guillemots.
Again,
I do a little snitch for you. I am a guillemot. I use my bill a lot. I get the fish out of the wet. I eat my fill a lot. I live on ledges, vertical edges. Eating wise, I do not know what veg is. Don't give me sherbet, give me a turbot. My appetite for fish I cannot curb it. I am a guillemot. I find the fishes tend to lose 1-0 a lot. I see that there people are writing about the Irobe dancers, which is something that John Keats saw, and he was very impressed, and he said it was better than the French. He's a bit down on the French, actually. He says, you know, not like French dancing, because they were really going for it. It's a wonderful. As somebody's written in the chat, they've actually.
Sue. I'll come to you in a second, Amy. Sue knows a lot about folklore and stuff that's happened in Cumbria. Sue lives in Wigton, not a million miles away.
I see. Yeah.
Sue, tell us about that.
Michael McGregor probably knows more about the background of it. Keats was writing to his brother on a tour of the north, and he'd been up Skiddaw the day before when he landed at Irobe, and they're still arguing over which pub he stayed at in Irobe. Still doing that. And he went to the kids' dancing school, and yeah, I thought, well, you know, they kick it and jump it with metal extraordinary, and whisk it and frisk it and toad it and goed it and twirled it and whirled it and stamped it and sweated it, tattooing the floor like mad. My Ceilidh band used to do regular Ceilidhs at Irobe, and I put that quote on our album sleeve, of course. That's the kind of standard of dancing we expected.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sue. Amy.
Hi, John. Yeah, I just wondered how you got your start in poetry, what drew you to it. It's just always really interesting to hear what drew people to it. And you mentioned John Cooper Clarke before. I'm a really big fan of his, but he's wrote a lovely memoir, which it's just always so interesting to hear. You know, he had such a long winding journey to get there. You know, it wasn't just came out of school, became a poet, you know, he's sort of had 20 jobs, and so yeah, just always interested to hear what got you going.
Yeah, well, the first job I had was Interaction in London, which was working with youngsters in a summer play scheme. I was hired as a musician, actually, rather than anything to do with the words. But that started me on a sort of performing trajectory, and it just felt that it was fortunate. I was talking to Jinder the other night from Corner Shop, and he said it was luck. He said a lot of it's to do with luck. I had the luck of that, of it just finding that job, and also the luck of getting a John Peel session, because he just happened to come to a 25 quid gig I was doing. A lot of fortune has played its part, but I've had the passion to do it, and it's been whenever the opportunity has come, I thought yes, and thankfully I've been able to take the opportunity. And that is what I say to people: keep your eyes open for the opportunities, and some of them you've got to make.
Yeah, it feels like it. I mean, in Cumbria, there's quite a thriving poetry. I'm going to ask Michael about this in a second, because Michael runs Wordsworth Grasmere and knows a bit about poetry. But it feels to me a bit about the poetry scene in Cumbria you know, it's pretty healthy at the moment. There's a lot going on in Carlisle, I know. There's poets that meet in around Wordsworth Grasmere, and Barrow. Kim Moore is from Barrow. I know I think she's about to move from Barrow, but she's one of our best poets and has won awards recently as well. Michael, what's your sense of how poetry in Cumbria and perhaps performance poetry is at the moment?
I think it is very strong, as you say, Tom. And I mean, Kim Moore, obviously, who's just recently won the Forward Prize, so one of the really big poetry prizes. And Kim runs a bi-monthly online poetry reading for us, which includes an open mic session. And I think one of the fascinating things for me is that every session is overbooked with Cumbrian poets wanting to perform. And it is absolutely fantastic. So I think there's a lot of richness there. And we run two creative writing groups with young people, Dove Cottage Young Poets and Untrodden Ways. And they're both based in the south of the county, and one of them's based in Barrow. And it's what Kim identified was the importance of encouraging people, children at an early age, to take poetry seriously and to give them that support network, which they don't often get, and they feel that they're kind of writing by themselves. So it's really important to have that to grow the poets of the future, which Wordsworth would have heartily approved of.
Absolutely. And Kate, I know Kate Davis, is she still with us? She is still with us. I know she was.
I am. I'm leaving my video off because I'm currently putting my thermal layers on because I'm going out shortly.
There's a lot of love for you, Kate, in chat. Kate Davis is on this call. She's a mega poet from Barrow, has commission for the West Coast thing.
Yeah, that was one of my favourite things to do. Well, I say favourite, no, it's one of my more interesting things to do. It was a bit of a challenge, that one, actually. Yeah, but I agree with Kim on the thing about getting young people engaged with poetry. My approach is always to kind of tell them, help them realize that firstly, you can never get it wrong, but you can usually do it better. You know, you can usually improve things, but it's never going to be wrong, which is brilliant. And also that they already own what they need, you know, so it's already theirs. It's just what they choose to do with it. And I've always found that really exciting. That's why I still, even though I'm a very old woman, I still enjoy, you know, working in schools, and outside of mainstream education in particular is my favorite, you know, in people referral units and prisons and things, because a lot of the time people there actually don't think that language is for them, you know, that doing things with languages is actually an option for them. And when you tell them, well, it absolutely is, and they see what they can do within less than 15 minutes, it's amazing. It never fails to sort of thrill me with sort of excitement and glee and joy that actually, look what you've just done. So that's my little kind of, I won't call it a mission, but it's my great pleasure to do those things.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Kate. John, Wordsworth, any thoughts?
Well, it's funny that John Keats went round to see him and he wanted in. He was out canvassing. He was out canvassing for somebody John Keats didn't agree with. He was a bit disappointed that he was, you know, that's what he was doing when he came round to see him. And he'd come a long way. He'd walked a long way to see William Wordsworth. Yeah, I want to read more, actually. I was reading some of his stuff the other day, and I did a lovely workshop with kids, and we did some Wandered Lonely as a Cloud poems, but various wanderings that we did with the youngsters. That was really nice, and it was really lovely my time at Wordsworth Trust when I came up and did a show there. I mean, it's fantastic that there's these places where people are coming, kids are coming to that. I mean, I just imagine, I mean, as a kid, if I'd have come to somewhere like the Wordsworth Trust as a child and been immersed in poetry in that way.
Yeah. Well, I think the Wordsworth Trust, Wordsworth Grasmere, as it's now called, does a fantastic job trying to reach out to young people, as do a lot of people on this call. I know Phil, you know, in Carlisle, runs regular poetry evenings as well, and they're very open and you know, to all ages and all backgrounds, etc. So anyway, salute the poetry scene in Cumbria.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, John, before we move on and talk about orchestras and kind of passing thought about, you know, how important it is that culture and stuff, all the people represented on this call that are of different backgrounds, doing all sorts of different cultural and artistic things. Why does this stuff matter? You know, and what can we do to help promulgate the messaging?
Well, I just think, first of all, just telling my friend at the folk club last night about what the Liverpool Philharmonic are going to do. We were joyous, actually, really. And just to know that for 3 years, something like that is going to happen, because it can spread joy. Because it can spread joy. Someone, who is it was asked? Somebody asked about what I want put on my tombstone here, Matthew. And I would just put thank you, or merci in French, perhaps, thank you stroke merci. And gratitude is a thing that I think is very important. That's one of the things I do in the workshops. I get people to, what are they grateful for? What are we grateful for? And culture is something that we can be grateful for.
Well said, sir. Merci. Thank you, John. Stick around, because we're going to hear more about what's going on with the Liverpool Philharmonic and Barrow. But thank you very much, John, for sharing some time with us this morning and reciting some beautiful lines. And looking forward to the Carlisle gig as well. I think Amy's going to stick a link into chat in a second, but it's at 6 o'clock on the 21st of December.
So that's a workshop, Tom, I think, that one.
Yes, the workshop, and then there's performance.
I think the gig is sold out. I hear this gig is sold out, so...
Oh, right, okay. The Dark Times Cabaret. Well, if you can squeeze in or pinch somebody.
If you come to the door, I'll come downstairs and sing you a song. What time does it say it starts, Tom?
6 o'clock is the workshop, I think.
What time's the other thing start?
Yeah.
What time's the other thing start? Because I'll come downstairs and I'll sing you a song outside.
I'm going to guess it's 7:30.
Okay, I'll come down. I'll come down at 7:45 outside, and I'll sing some songs outside.
Excellent. You've been warned and warmed to that beautiful idea. Thank you very much, John. That sounds fantastic. Thank you. I noticed that Derek has written a poem as well, which we might come back to in due course. But yeah, thank you very much, John Hegley, with the tinsel around his neck. Deck chairs and dogs. Elie Gussman is from the Liverpool Philharmonic, Royal Liverpool Philharmonic, and Andrew Deakin is from Full of Noises. And I'm going to hand over the airwaves to them, as it were, for the next period of time. Amy's going to pull up slides, and they're going to tell us about this amazing 3-year project that's about to start in Barrow. So Elie, over to you.
Thanks so much. My boiler's just kicked in right at this moment, so sorry if it's a bit
Congratulations.
First of all, it's just such a lovely group to join, and I'm really looking forward to coming along to some more of these on Fridays. But what a lovely group of people, and I feel a bit overwhelmed coming in after John, but also lovely to hear your words about what an orchestra is and what it means to people. I'm hoping this is not going to turn into death by PowerPoint, so I will whip through these slides. But Helen, if you could just come to number 2, I'll just really briefly outline what we're going to try and cover.
So Amy is sharing the slides, Elie.
Oh,
Amy,
sorry.
She responds to all sorts of names, but Amy's the best one.
My apologies. I don't know where I got Helen from. So thank you, Amy. So I'm basically going to kick off with just telling you how this project came about, and a bit more context about the Liverpool Philharmonic. And then the wonderful Andrew is going to tell us a bit more about Barrow. And then we'll probably, between us, cover the rest of the area. So I think if we go straight into the next slide, as I was just mentioning, Barrow, in fairness, was one of the 15 priority places in the north identified by the Arts Council. And when the Liverpool Phil was putting in its application for the current round of national portfolio organisations, the way for them to get any uplift was basically to apply for one of these priority places in addition to their work in Liverpool. And they actually put in, I think, 4 applications, and the one that came through was Barrow, which in some ways was the most challenging. It's a 2-hour trip up from Liverpool to get to Barrow, but I think they all believe very strongly that it's by far the most interesting, and actually is kind of a bit of a fantastic opportunity to bring the way in which the Liverpool works to a new place and really think about how that can work. And it's a very much a 2-way learning process between both Barrow and Liverpool. So why should Liverpool Philharmonic be the orchestra to come to Barrow? And I'm obviously slightly biased because I'm working with them, but I am a freelancer, and I did choose to work with them on this project because I think there's something rather special about both the orchestra and Barrow. The Liverpool Philharmonic, in terms of the other orchestras in the UK, is actually the oldest continuously performing orchestra, founded in 1840. Of course, it's part of the amazing cultural and music kind of incredible scene in Liverpool. So there's something in that place that kind of everyone gets so excited about music making, and it feels like it's really just in people's, like, that they feel very a big ownership over the orchestra and really excited about having that as part of their city. The other thing that I think distinguishes the Liverpool Phil is it's the only orchestra that actually has its own concert hall. Most orchestras are resident in a hall and have to kind of continually have that tussle between other things going on in the venue. And I think there's something about the fact that the organization overlooks all of the concert programming in that hall, covering a massively wide range of music as well as spoken word and comedy. And that, I think, that kind of breadth of perspective gives them a slightly different edge to other orchestras, and also the depth of their learning program. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment, but I think there's something about demonstrating how much an orchestra can be relevant and useful to the community. And I mean, I think the other thing, they're very modest about what they do, but they are one of the largest NPOs in the country. And I think they take that very seriously. They really do think about how they can be relevant and just get on with it and do some really fantastic work. So just to give you a bit more context, and so could we move on to, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to move the slides on. If you just quickly look at the next one, so Liverpool Philharmonic just shows you the concert hall, which that fantastic building. Yeah, so performances. So across the orchestra and also all of the other gigs they do in the hall, they do 400 concerts a year, and that includes a smaller space, the music room at the back of the building. And of those 400 concerts, 70 a year are with the orchestra, another 30 are with other versions of the orchestra, smaller ensembles. There's the 10-10 ensemble that Andrew might tell you a little bit about as well. But they're a very flexible orchestra who can do things in all sorts of different ways. And of course, lots of orchestras do that, but I think the Liverpool Philharmonic do it particularly well. So alongside kind of classical symphonic orchestra concerts, they do schools, a large range of schools concerts for Key Stage 1 up to Key Stage 4 and 5. They also do, they're deep in the middle of in the big Christmas spectacular performances at the moment. They also do lots of collaborations with pop artists, film music concerts, lots of Harry Potter, and then all sorts of kind of smaller ensembles. They kind of really see that kind of ensemble of possibilities, as the composer Pierre Boulez described the orchestra in, all of the different ways that you can divide up an orchestra and also keep that kind of chamber music playing going in an orchestra, which is so vital for them when they're playing as a full orchestra. And then that last point about performances with the orchestra in concert halls around the UK, that's one of the things that's been shifting. They have still lots of concerts going on at the Glasshouse, Sage Gateshead, Nottingham. They're going on tour to Japan next June. But actually, the model of the orchestra performing regionally has really shifted in recent years. So actually, the opportunity for the orchestra to come in and be resident in somewhere like Barrow is actually really needed, and also really something that the orchestra is excited about. Next slide, please. Let me just get my next slide as well. So learning and participation, as I was saying, this is a kind of really significant part of the orchestra's work, and it's very much at the heart of everything they do. And just picking one of those, In Harmony, which is their program inspired by the El Sistema project in Venezuela, started off almost 15 years ago. They're celebrating 15 years next year. And that reaches 1,750 children every week, working in North Liverpool and Everton and Anfield. And interestingly, Michael Eakin, who's the chief exec at the Liverpool Phil, talks about this project as one with a generational impact. It's something that needs that sustained work over time and the continuity of knowing that the orchestra is going to be there with them throughout all of that, and that long-term commitment, which, you know, takes time for the changes to happen. Interestingly, Andrew and I were just talking yesterday and thinking about kind of young people coming through that program, and alongside In Harmony they have a youth company, and they already have, I think it's 40 people on the In Harmony program who are on their kind of talent development program, and of those 17 are already in the youth company. So we're beginning to see kind of young musicians coming through working in the youth orchestra, and they've just recently appointed one of the trumpet players in the orchestra through the youth company who was in the youth orchestra a few years ago. So it's also, you know, actually impacting into the orchestra that work in the communities in Liverpool, seeing those young people coming through into the orchestra as well. Alongside projects like In Harmony, their music and health program with the NHS has been working. It's just celebrated 15 years this year. And again, it's just that thing of saying that when the Liverpool Phil comes in and does something, they do it for the long term. And it's really about building those partnerships and doing it with the people who have those vital connections into the community. So next slide. I'm just going to talk a little bit about kind of the role of an orchestra in the 21st century and what an orchestra can represent. I think there's something really special about that kind of sense of coming together as a group, what an orchestra is and can only be by working with everyone together. And also that thing of working on a collective goal. But there's also something unspoken about, you know, that experience of coming in, that sonic experience of hearing an orchestra for the first time. And I was really moved last 2 weeks ago, actually. We had a group, Kate Davis was there as well. I'm not sure if she's still with us now, but John Murphy, who was also in that group from Barrow, who came down to Liverpool 2 weeks ago, was sitting next to me. And he said to me, I'm a 75-year-old man, and this is the first time I'm hearing an orchestra live. And the first piece started and he just went, ah. And it was just that feeling of, yeah, that's what we all feel. It is an incredible experience where you just have that, you know, music sound of an orchestra surrounding you. And it's something very special and something that we want everyone to have that experience in their lives. I think I'm just trying to think if there's anything else that I should have mentioned here, but I think you've probably read bits of these slides as well. I'm going to pass over to Andrew just to say a little bit more about Barrow, so we can have the next slide.
Thanks, Elie. I should say from the outset that I've only been in Barrow 20 years, so I'm a bit of an incomer, but it feels completely like home, and reminds me of where I grew up in Lancashire. It is Lancashire still, we don't mention it. So most of you will know, but in many ways, I was saying to Elie yesterday, a lot of people don't come to Barrow, so they know it by reputation and name, but don't actually visit, and are often very surprised when they do. But it's on it's on a peninsula. It doesn't lead anywhere, so unless you don't sort of pass through Barrow on the way to anywhere. And there are all sorts of consequences from that both cultural and commercial, but I won't cover them here. Population close, getting on to 70,000. So in some places this would be a city. In America it might be a city, but it's definitely a town. There's a shared identity as Barrovians, and Barrovians born and bred are astonishingly proud of that. And it's a term you'll hear, you know, most days in some conversation or another. And like it says here, there's a proud heritage of production and innovation. The place was built by Victorian entrepreneurs and innovated in all aspects of engineering and commerce. And the town is quite rightly proud of that. And this is one from Maddie. She unearthed this fact that it's ranked as #1 in England for its natural assets, and it's one of those things that surprises almost everyone, because if they think of Barrow at all, they think of it as being a sort of post-industrial town, and it's got surrounding the town and within walking distance of the town centre. There are 3 triple SIs. There's the most astonishing natural resources and nature. One of Wordsworth's favourite views can be had from Ron Head. So it is, I'm maybe speaking as one of the converted, but it is the most astonishing place. Next slide, please, Amy. And there's lots going on. I think Amy mentioned this last week. She even suggested she might be tempted to move to Barrow because there's so much going on, but was being held in Carlisle because she wanted to stay with her friends. I meant to say last week, Amy, bring them as well. You'd be very welcome. There are 4 MPOs, Art Gene, Full of Noises, Signal Film and Media and Theatre Factory. That in itself is a remarkable thing. And they're all within 10 minutes walk of each other, if that. And alongside that, and equally importantly, are other organisations involved in arts, named here at Barrowful, the Northwest Music Academy, which was partly set up to try and fill a gap that's been left in secondary music education, which we might come to at some point later. There's the Barrow Classical Music Foundation and Furness Classical. Why we've got 2 classical music organisations in Barrow is a charming thing. But yeah, there's classical music going on again at a surprisingly high level, given that we're a small town at the end of a peninsula. And there's a book to be written about how all that has come to be. There's also this fantastic history of music making. And a bit like Liverpool, we'll probably come to this later, but the connections between Liverpool and Barrow are quite striking. But there's this history of having to do it for yourself, having to make your own entertainment because it was difficult to bring it in. So there's music theatre. There's still a brass band holding on. There's still a choral society just about holding on, and alongside that there is music. What we might call entertainment music. Again, going back to the early part of last century, dance bands, and there are a phenomenal number of really, really gifted rock and pop musicians who are out nightly. There's not any night of the week you'll be able to choose 3 or 4 places to go and listen to really high caliber bands. Next slide, please. Should I talk about this, Elie?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. When we were looking at the connections between Liverpool and Barrow, a few things came up, and obviously we're both ports, and equally importantly, we both as places look westwards out into the Atlantic and across to America. So even though we're on the end of a peninsula, we're not insular. It's just that we look out westwards. I mean, it's the same with other places on the west coast. They look out to the west, and because of that, the population over generations has travelled to all parts of the world. And I've noticed this mostly. I spend half my time in charity shops for all sorts of reasons, and you find records from South Africa, for instance. But you find all sorts of things that have found their way here because we're a port. And there's a perhaps not as rich as Liverpool, but there is a movement of different cultures into Barrow. Because of course, 170 years ago, Barrow was a tiny little, it wasn't even a village. So everyone came from somewhere else, mostly within the UK, but not exclusively. And like I mentioned earlier, there's this own built do-it-yourself music scene that has been around for, over 100 years. And results in slightly off-kilter music making, which again you see in Liverpool. We're also welcoming and curious. Again, if you know any Scousers, they've got the same quality. Barrow people are almost without exception welcoming and curious, and they'll tell you what they think. We found this. They'll stop and look and listen to almost anything, and then they'll tell you what they think, often very directly, without malice. But you certainly know what people think, and we make things happen. That's why there's 4 MPOs in Barrow, because various people going back before Welfare State, but Welfare State kicked off the work that's been done in the last 30 years. They've made things happen, rather than bemoaning the fact that these things aren't there. People have got up and made those happen. And there's this overwhelming sense of pride and ownership, which is shared with many places. Alongside that, and this is something that we'll probably cover over the next few years, is this lack of self-confidence. So they'll defend the town to the hilt, but often will also criticize the town for not having anything on offer, and nothing ever happens here, and all of that. And it's a really interesting and peculiar mindset that I think having the Liverpool Phil in town for let's go for 10 years, Elie.
Sounds good.
Will make a huge difference to that.
Andrew and Elie, I'm just going to jump in. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes because there might be a couple of questions, and then we're going to squeeze something in before the end.
We'll just whip through. So really quickly, next slide. Our approach, just to say, this sounds a bit arts council-y, but the thing with the Liverpool Phil is that they actually do it. My experience of working with them over the last few months is that they genuinely want to work in partnership and do. So this is an example at Daniel's recent Barrowful of Christmas at the weekend in the town hall, where we got snow in Barrow for the first time in 25 years. This is Elizabeth McNulty, who's the principal harp at Liverpool Phil, with Mary Dunsford, who lives in Askham. So, and it was the first performance we did together in Barrow together. And let's just move on to the next slide. So this is just a really quick summary of the 3 strands of our work. We're kicking off with a performance on the 20th of January with the chief conductor Domingo Hindoyan, Beethoven 5, together with a film made by Colin Aldred, who is lives in Barrow, an amazing aerial filmmaker, and it's going to be a really fantastic concert. It is actually sold out fantastically, but it hopefully means that we can give you tickets to performances in the rest of the year. In participation, we're going to be reaching, we hope, every single one of the primary schools, all 32 of them, over the next 3 years, which is going to be quite a mission, but they're all really excited about it so far. And we're also just really wanting to do things together. So co-curation is basically demonstrating that sense of building projects together with partners in Barrow. Next slide, if we've got 1 minute. I just thought it'd be useful to share some of the responses to a recent meeting we had at the end of November in Barrow, and just going around the room, hearing people responding to what we talked about in terms of what we're doing. Some interesting stuff here about kind of with ticket pricing coming up, because actually I think that's going to take some time to kind of work out the right way of doing this. Maybe we've not got it quite right at the moment. There's also that sense of, are we coming in and trying to take over? Obviously, hopefully not, but that sense of saying creativity breeds creativity from someone in the room, just making sure communication goes through. But actually, this is a quote from Andrew at the end, which I think is really lovely. It's all about people, an open heart, and an exchange of expertise, which hopefully, if we do that, we'll do something special.
Thank you, Elie. Thank you, Andrew. I think that last line, it kind of explains what CACN is all about as well. I think that's roughly what we're about too. Matthew asks, I guess it's one for you, Elie, about acoustics. How do Barrow's concert acoustics compare with those at Liverpool's Philharmonic Hall?
Really good point. Well, it's yet to know. We're basically doing the first concert in the Forum, and we're bringing an ensemble of 43 musicians. And we've basically just sorted out the layout so that we perform behind the proscenium. But basically, we're not sure yet how it's going to work. And we're still investigating lots of other spaces to perform in as well. Lots of churches, but hopefully outdoors as well.
You got 3 years, potentially 10 years to come up with an answer, so no doubt you will. Thank you very much indeed. Any other questions? I'm going to be at that concert on the 20th of January, Saturday. I'm definitely going to be there. And that sense of blimey, that's an orchestra. I've never heard an orchestra before. I've probably heard an orchestra less than half a dozen times in my life. So it's just the excitement of seeing 50 musicians all play kind of the same tune together is exciting. And I'm looking forward to that immensely. Thank you very much. I think we'll stay in touch with this project. Clearly, Andrew is clearly part of the network. Elliot, I'd love to think that you might come back
That'll be great.
every now and then and tell us about how things are going. And no doubt there'll be bumps in the road as well. This stuff is never easy, but what a great ambition and you know, to do what you're doing. Thank you very much, and well done to the Arts Council for funding this kind of stuff as well. They often don't get much congratulations, but I think they deserve some praise here. Before we finish, last few minutes, Kate, did you want to mention something about a commission that is going out shortly?
Please. Yes, I just want to draw your attention to the fact that Cumbria Museum Consortium is offering a commission to an artist of any kind, any discipline, to make a creative response to the Helping Hands conference on the 22nd of February. Helping Hands is a project that many of you here will have heard of or be involved. It's about breaking down barriers to volunteering in cultural organisations, encouraging more people to volunteer, helping more people to be able to volunteer in our museums, theatres, art centres and so on. We've got a sort of end of project conference on the 22nd of February at the Sunbeams Music Centre, and we're looking for somebody to make a creative response to that. It could be in song, it could be through poetry, it could be visual artist, any discipline. And the details of the commission for which the deadline, the closing date is the 19th of January, are there in the link. So please take a little look because we'd like to do something just a little bit different. Last time we did a Museums Consortium conference, we had a poetic response and it was totally brilliant, brought the house down. So
could it be a spelt basket?
Yeah, it could be a spelt basket.
Okay.
Yeah. I really mean that we want to keep a complete open mind to what's possible. And the way that you submit your proposal is equally open. So take a look at what we're looking for and get in touch by the 19th of, well.
And Amy's put a link into chat there as well.
Indeed. Yeah. So that's me with my Cumbria Museum Consortium hat on. Can I take that hat off and just speak as chair of the CACN for a moment?
We've got a purple ribbon hat on at the moment, so carry
it's
on.
Attached to my hair, so I'm not going to try and take that off. But it's, yeah, just before you draw the call to a close, Tom, can I say thank you, as usual, to the usual people. First of all, you, Tom, for bringing us together every single week and putting on an interesting call every single week. I've lost track of how many thousands of calls we've done now since 2020. But as somebody said, I think, I'm sorry, I lost track of who it was in the chat that said, I think it was Tim Coombe, said these calls and CACN make a difference to quality of life in Cumbria, which is about as good as it gets, if that's what people say about what we do. Thank you. So thank you also to Amy, who does all the important stuff behind the scenes and takes very little glory, but she's amazing and lovely and we couldn't do it without her. Also to Chris, who's on this call, who does the hard work adding up the money and applying for the money in the background, and to the steering group as well. So we have Andrew and Stefan here today from the steering group who are just rocks, all of you, and I think you're just lovely people to work with, which always helps, doesn't it? Finally, I just want to say that John was saying a moment earlier about what are we thankful for, what are we grateful for? It made me think what I'm grateful for is to have had parents who immersed me in music as a kid. As the daughter of a music teacher, I was just completely wrapped up in music from the day I was born, and it stayed with me forever. And it is just, I'm just so grateful for that. But lucky me for having that. Not everybody does, do they? And I think it's our responsibility as people working in the culture sector to make sure that every child has that, and every adult for that matter. And, you know, I hope that's what we all try and achieve. I think it is in our day-to-day. So that's what I'm grateful for, and it's nice to take that away from today. Thank you to all of you. Thankfully, you turn up week after week, not every week necessarily, which is fine. Drop in when you can and keep doing that next year. Thank you very much, and Merry Christmas from me, Tom.
Thank you, Kate. Lovely words, really, and thank you for everything that you do to lead the organisation as well. You put in an awful lot of work. Thank you very much. You even put a bow in your hair on our festive call. Thank you. Thanks very much to Elie and to Andrew and to John for joining us. John, last thought from you. How was that? How was that hour for you? Was that a come off mute, John? Come off mute. Come off mute, John, if you can hear me. Come off mute. There we
When
go.
I went to Barrow, it's the only town that somebody had said, come up to me and said, thank you for coming to Barrow. People come to say thank me for coming to shows, but nobody anywhere else has ever said that. And here is a very, very quick Christmas poem. There came 3 wise men from the east, and so it came to pass. The wise men found the shepherds a bit working class.
Happy Christmas, everybody. We're back with you on January the 12th for the next Friday call. Thank you, John. Beautiful art in motion. Lovely to see you all. Happy Christmas. See you in 2024.